The year in virtual reality, the Pokemon Go craze, Mario on the iPhone, the best games of 2016, and what's coming in 2017. All that and a whole lot more coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit. Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1671, recorded Thursday, December 8th, 2016, for Wednesday, December 28th, 2016.
Welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we talk about everything you need to know about technology. Usually it's today, but today we're doing one of our holiday specials, and we're going to talk about all of one of the topics you need to know about, and today that's gaming.
Gaming. So many things happened this year in the world of gaming, and neither of us are necessarily like hardcore gamers, although I will say I really got into VR this year. Fascinated with it. I feel like I need to pick up a system. I just don't know when that's going to happen. So I'm like on the edges, but you know who's engulfed in this stuff? You know him already because he's on almost every week on this show. Sam Machkovech from Ars Technica. How's it going, Sam?
Sorry, I'm in a totally different world right now.
Whoa!
I got my virtual reality headset. I'm already in 2017.
I see that it says HTC. Is this the new HTC Vive that looks like a smartphone?
Yeah, they charge you way too much money, and then you just stick a phone in your face and look stupid. Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
Why is that company struggling? Yeah, who knows?
Well, we've got a lot to talk about, and not a whole lot of time. I mean, we've got a normal size episode, but so many stories. So why don't we get right to it? First, let's talk a bit about some of the big gaming technology threads to kind of permeate throughout 2016. In many ways, 2016 feels like the year that virtual reality commanded its place in the spotlight. Personally, like I said, I found myself just intrigued by the promise of VR this year. Sam, you spoke a lot about all VR platforms on this show throughout the year. You've lived with them all. What is your platform of choice at this point?
My platform of choice is a little bit of all of them or none of them. That's the weird answer because we essentially have three big dogs and then some smaller players. We have the HTC Vive, which lets you walk around a room, put it on, have a bunch of cords dangling off. Not as comfortable in terms of headset as some of the others, but definitely lets you do some interesting things in terms of having your hands be able to move around in full space. Next to that, we have the Oculus Rift that came out around the same time earlier this year, has a more comfortable headset, is generally designed for sitting, and finally got its Oculus Touch add-on, which are its own handheld controllers. These, compared to the HTC Vive, kind of fit into your hand nice and neat, whereas the Vive wand is this thing you just have to hold like a Wii remote. And we're still sort of sorting out our feelings about Oculus Touch in terms of replicating some of the cooler stuff we like about the Vive. Before I dig any more into that one, there's also PlayStation VR, which came out last month exclusively for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro systems. The PlayStation VR is specifically for sitting down, has a little bit of hand tracking as well. They all three essentially are doing kind of the same thing now, where you feel like you're in another place, you're connected to a pretty good gaming kind of computer or console, something that's gaming caliber, and you're able to use your hands and move your head around a little bit. So we finally, at the end of 2016, after all the hubbub, ultimately have three platforms that you can sort of make the same games for. That's huge to me. I think that's the biggest thing, is that if you get any of these platforms for any reason, if you do buy in, and they are pretty expensive still, you are at least going to expect certain games to repeat. There's a job simulator. That's going to be on every single platform. There's Fantastic Contraption. That's going to be on every single platform. Those are two of the big ones. There's going to be other ones that are exclusive to one system or another. But at least that baseline feeling of you go somewhere else and you can use your hands is kind of established. I think that's an interesting starting point as we move into 2017's VR state.
And what about smartphone VR? Is there anything that came out this year in that realm that excites you?
So the Gear VR is continuing. I believe their second refresh either came late last year or beginning of this year. Either way, that's still new to a lot of people, this idea of the Samsung Gear VR. If you have a compatible Samsung phone and it's not the kind that's going to blow up attached to your face, you can attach it to the Gear VR doohickey and be in sort of a virtual space, but you have to be sitting down. It's not as immersive as these computer-based ones. Google has its own platform, finally, the Google Daydream. This headset can only attach to one type of phone, which is the Google Pixel. Either of the Google Pixel sizes will work where you plug that in. Those are both essentially doing the same thing. Google Daydream has this little wand attachment, this little tiny remote, and you can see yourself in the VR world having this little thing wave around, but it's not perfectly tracked, and it doesn't perfectly track your head as you use it, so it's not the same as some of these other platforms. This little controller is not quite the difference maker that we were hoping for when we heard about it, but they both give you that nice little taste that's above and beyond what had come out last year, which is Google Cardboard. Google Cardboard being you take a crappy cardboardish piece of thing with a couple of lenses in it and stick pretty much any phone in, which is nice because it gives you that sort of immediate, cheap taste of what VR can feel like, of, okay, wow, I feel like I'm there. When I move my head, the world moves with me. But that does that. These other ones are a little bit nicer in that they are designed for basic gaming. And gaming is really the baseline function for this sort of stuff, because it is, if you're in another world, you want to help, you want to control it, you want to interact with it. You don't just want to watch it. So the interactivity potential of Samsung Gear VR and Google Daydream is both a little better than Cardboard, but it's really going to depend on how many people actually play with this stuff. And those are metrics that we don't have. We don't know how well those VR apps are doing and whether people are getting them, but Google's got the uphill battle of it only working with the Pixel phones. Samsung has the uphill battle of it only working with their phones. It's still ultimately closed.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything aside from Google Cardboard that you would recommend for an iPhone user who wanted to get into smartphone VR?
Find a friend who's ponied up too much money for what I would call real VR. I'm really not kidding. The phone stuff just can still not quite match up with your movement. And if you feel that tiniest bit of nausea, you're out. I think VR is one of those things that you really want to get everything right for, which is why these systems are so expensive. It's still $600 for the Oculus. It's still $800 for the Vive. The Oculus's touch controllers, that's an extra $200. PlayStation VR is, $400-ish, and you have to get this certain controller and a camera. It's a complicated ecosystem because you need all these things in place for that wow feeling of, I am painting in VR. I am shooting at that guy. I am standing on top of Mount Rainier and looking out over things. I really, really can't stress enough that you try and get somebody that full experience instead of handing them a Samsung or Google experience. Those work. They're a little impressive. But if you're going to have to get just the specific phone and the specific headset, why not go one crazier and call your buddy Steve, who has all the gizmos?
Mm-hmm. Good idea. Everybody needs a Steve in their life. Back in August, Microsoft launched the Xbox One S. That's a dapper little game machine capable of 4K Blu-ray, 4K video streaming, and HDR. Prices started at $299. Now, when it came out, Sam, you were cautious about recommending it. Tell us why.
Well, the Xbox One S, I've actually over time grown to really love it, and I'll get to that. But when you get it at first, it doesn't do that much different. It's got 4K capabilities, it's got HDR capabilities, but it's not boosting games. If you are just wanting to get the latest and greatest game system, it's not going to necessarily be the Xbox One S. It's just the refresh that the system honestly needed in terms of being less ugly and less giant. The original Xbox One S is a beast. It's gross looking. I really think this is a handsome system, but it's about tempering expectations. Now, when I first said that, I did not have an HDR10 capable display to hook it up to. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, HDR is not messing around. You're going to be hearing a lot about HDR in the coming year. But in the meantime, the Xbox One S, the PlayStation 4 Pro, and the PlayStation 4 stock all support HDR10. And video games can really capitalize on this specific perk, which is that bright spots on the image don't have to unnaturally glow and blend in a funny way. They can just have their really bright point, like a sun or a headlight, exists just in that space. The Xbox One S is already compatible with some of these, including Gears of War 4 and Forza Horizon 3. These sort of moments where bright and dark collide and where color gamut can really be strong and rich is really cool in a video game and in a movie. So if you do, for any reason, already have, an $800 to $1,200 TV. They do cost more at least, but you can get to that point for HDR. And if you are buying one of those, the Xbox One S gets you there with compatible apps and compatible games. So there's actually, I think, more reason to be excited about it than it was when I originally got it. And it really does matter about how much more money are you willing to spend? How far are you willing to go down that spending money on your living room cliff?
So, another part of this obviously is the content that's required to kind of drive these higher resolution solutions. But then there's upscaling, up conversion in these systems as well. Is that a worthy selling point, or is that just kind of like you got to do it? I mean, is the quality actually that much dramatically improved when you do that?
It's nice if you have a 4K display and the Xbox One S. You do get just a little bit of that upscaling because these are pretty active games. And for now, you won't really notice the major difference if you are taking that Xbox One S and running it on a 4K screen. All in all, I mean, you can really get up there and pixel crawl and get obsessed. But for now, you do notice a little bit of it. But 4K is a really demanding amount of pixels. 3840 by 2160. I always forget. It's 4 times 1080p. That's a lot of pixels to drive. And there's another console out there that is totally dipping its toes into that 4K water. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with the PlayStation 4 Pro?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the other big system that has been announced. Obviously, kind of going toe to toe with the Xbox One S. So tell us a little bit about this and what makes this so special.
Absolutely. The PlayStation 4 Pro is trying to find that segue, that transition between your 1080p set and your 4K set. Again, 4K, that's a lot of pixels. You need a lot of graphical horsepower to drive a full 4K image, especially if you're doing a bunch of other visual tricks on there, if you're doing lighting systems, if you're doing anti-aliasing, all these sorts of things that high-end video games really shine with. But the PlayStation 4 Pro has a solution of an upscale that does sort of what's called checkerboarding, where they're taking the image, which isn't quite 4K. You're usually going to about 1800p as opposed to 1080p. So that's not quite 2160p, which is what 4K is. Sorry for all the P. But point being, you're getting pretty close to 4K. These are actively moving games as opposed to frozen images or really slow-moving cinema scenes. And the result has been quite good. PlayStation 4 Pro is doing a really good job of taking games that look quite good on the normal PlayStation 4 Pro and blowing them up in a way that really does look impressive. You're combining that 4K richness, not quite 4K, but you're getting there, but you're getting that richness in the pixels combined with that HDR effect. Because again, a lot of these 4K TVs from last year and this year are HDR10 certified. Check for that. It definitely makes a difference. And it's the combination, the extra pixels and that extra color detail, that really pops and is really going to drive interest in game systems going forward. So for now, if you do have the television, PlayStation 4 Pro, definitely noticeable. If you only have a 1080p set, you're just not going to get as much of a boost. So it might just be a wait and see sort of thing. You may just want to sit this year's gadget conversation out.
Yeah, so that's kind of one of my questions that I had about HDR in general as it relates to gaming, because it feels like obviously this is the year that these systems came out to support this. There's a handful of games that are really tapping into it. I mean, moving into 2017, does this become less about aspirational technology and more about must-have? Like, is this enough reason for people to upgrade their consoles and upgrade their televisions in order to take advantage of it?
I think what's nice right now is that we're essentially, all the manufacturers seem to be doing the slow buildup. Right now is everybody who just wants to throw a ton of money at it can get a high-end computer or a PlayStation 4 Pro and attach that to a really expensive 4K HDR monitor. Now, next year, I think we're going to see a lot more affordable 4K, a lot more affordable HDR, and you're going to see new consoles. You're going to see which we may talk about it later, another entry from Xbox. I think they're sort of setting the table so that people hear about this stuff. They can go to their buddy's house and see the nicest, flashiest stuff right now. And then next year say, oh, wow, there's even more content. Now we have more videos on Netflix and Amazon and other supporting providers. Now we have more games. Now we know the systems are tuned for this resolution. So yeah, I think that in terms of this 4K push, it's working this year, and I think people are going to really believe in it next year.
It was the summer of Pokemon Go all over the world. The insanely popular faux augmented reality game was everywhere. It sort of felt like we were going to see people catching Snorlaxes in the streets for years to come. And yet, these days, I see very few people out there playing. Has Pokemon Go already gone, Sam? What do you think?
Hold on. I got to do my dailies. Give me just a second here.
Dailies.
So no, I mean honestly, it's a game that people are still playing. You know, actually, we just had a piece over at Ars Technica about their promotion with Starbucks for their Gen 2 Pokemon set, which are going to be out this month. They may be out by the time this episode is out. And people said, "Gosh, Pokemon Go, that was so 2016 or so like 5 months ago," just as if it had passed. But it's still in the top 10 of the grossing charts on both iOS and Android, which says to me that maybe it's not getting a bunch of new people, but it's sticking people. People are continuing to play it. The initial rush, I think, of everyone trying it for free died down as much as I expected, where people aren't necessarily going to have this be part of their daily life as much as, oh, this is new, I'd like to try it out, I'm familiar with the Pokemon characters. But they keep on adding content and adding little bites here and there to keep people who have started playing invested. They're leveling up. There are more Pokemon to catch. That's the beauty of this platform from Google, Niantic, and Nintendo's perspective, that there's just going to be Pokemon for years that they can keep adding. And you have to keep on going to certain parts of your real world to find them. Certain Pokemon are not or only going to exist near water in your real world, or only in parks, or only in dense downtown chunks of the city, and so on and so forth. So I don't see Pokemon Go fading at all. I see just the people who are playing are still playing, and they're still spending real money. And that's what matters, because if a game like this can drive people to spend money without like a giant hubbub loaded moment, then that says a lot for when these extra Pokemon just appear out of nowhere.
What about the kind of, looking forward looking back at what Pokemon did for the terminology of augmented reality? Some people would contest whether this is truly AR or not. But what does this say about kind of like the development of games going forward and the openness for people to kind of participate in games in this type of way, kind of mixing real reality with digital reality?
I thought somebody else would have started copying Pokemon Go by now, and we haven't seen that. And that is almost certainly going to come. I think by the middle of next year, at least some other major property holder, I would assume the Disney/Marvel/Star Wars worlds, would somehow do something of the same sort, since they have the same number of crazy characters that all get along. But who's to say if people are really going to join in? You know, I think that the partnership with Google that Niantic had for some of their previous stuff really helped them and helped them build this platform that's going to be hard for other people to replicate. But I do believe by the middle of next year, you're going to see people with a lot of money coming out and saying, we've got stuff where you can be out in the real world and use your camera and play with friends. It's just, I don't think any of them are going to have quite the fever that Pokemon did, because Pokemon has aged out in such a way that young people then are smartphone-loving, game-willing players now. And these are people who might have played Pokemon when they were 10 and aren't quote-unquote gamers, but still are familiar with it and remember that fun of sharing that with friends and joining in. I don't know that there would be anything else that really captures the I've got a smartphone and I'm using it all the time and I need something to do between my Snapchat sessions kind of game.
What about the cultural phenomenon of Pokemon Go? It was a little Google Glass in that it brought out a lot of anger in people. Like, there was a lot of mocking of Pokemon Go players. And it was a lot of just the simple fact that people were out in the world playing this game, the thing that they usually do behind closed doors. What are your thoughts on that?
I think my favorite Pokemon Go moment was when I was walking through a neighborhood that I'm not familiar with in Seattle. And there was just a dude hanging out looking. I think if 20 years ago, I would have felt like maybe this was a dangerous situation just because I was by myself. It was pretty dark out. And I realized, no, the dude was just trying to catch Pokemon. And it became what would have for like a little tiny young Sam would have been maybe a scary nighttime dark alleyway moment, turned instead into geeking out over which team we were on, which Pokemon were in the area. I think that was really a cool sort of moment that I repeated multiple times throughout the year, not just during the first wave of fever, but as it sort of died down from the headlines. But I do, in the initial rush, I mean, gosh, you saw the story of there were muggings that were happening where people would set Pokemon lures And then, sorry, I love this van. That was my worst photoshopping I ever did.
It's amazing. It's stellar.
But yeah, there were these crimes that happened that people would just set a lure, hang out, and then just grab somebody. And they actually changed the lead-in image on Pokemon Go now, so that when you load the game, it shows a person just kind of looking dumb and walking toward a dark cave with a giant Pokemon looking to like eat you, which I think would be an interesting sequel of the game of Pokemon Go to your death or something like that. But
Go in my belly.
But that was this funny thing where anytime you have a new technology that collides with a ton of people, you get these just sort of ludicrous social situations that pop up. And those have died down as everyone has figured out what the game is and is not. And now people are, they just seem to be enjoying it if they're still playing it. I think it's a bit of a crack style addiction where you're not getting a lot out of the game play necessarily. But if you have a social aspect, I mean, there are people who still do Pokemon walks around Seattle. They'll meet up and do just, it's better, I think, than Fitbit driving your steps. If,
right.
If Pikachu's driving your steps instead of a Fitbit, I'll take it.
Fair enough. All right. So Shigeru Miyamoto, the Walt Disney of video games, basically, who's responsible for Mario and Zelda, just to name a few, took to the Apple stage during the iPhone 7 announcement to shake hands with Apple CEO Tim Cook and unveiled Mario's premier mobile game, that's Super Mario Run. Now, at the time of this recorded show, the game is still yet to be released. I think it comes out next week, to be honest. But by the time you hear this, it'll already be out, and you'll probably already be playing it, and it'll be setting the the mobile gaming world on fire. Sam, people have been wanting Nintendo to take mobile seriously for many years. Now it seems like they have it without having played the game, or maybe you have. I don't know. Does it seem like this is going to satisfy?
Yes, having seen just a little bit of it, everyone's going to get this game. This game is going to instantly hit #1 on the charts the day it comes out. I believe that's December 12th. By the time we're talking about this, people will have already beaten it and replayed it. This is actually a pretty short game. It's going to be, I want to say, 24 levels in all. Now, Super Mario Brothers 3, to compare, was about 80 levels. And this was a game that came out, I want to say, in 1991, give or take. So for $10, you're getting 24 levels, and they're not very long. These are pretty quick burst, and they're designed to be replayed. They've got these little pink coin challenges and these friendless challenges and a quote-unquote kingdom builder. And they're all, these little extra modes are designed to get you to take the same levels and play them over and over and get as many coins as possible. And that's easy to do because it's just a one-button game. You just hold the controller or your phone with one hand, tap to jump, and tap to do other things. For example, you will automatically run over everything, including enemies. Like you'll see in some of these preview videos that are out that Mario will just sort of leap over a Goomba as if it's this little like hurdle, but you can tap while he's doing the hurdle in order to like springboard off of the Goomba, which is a new thing. This is one of a couple of new maneuvers that's being added because you are not controlling the running. Mario just goes. Little platforms will make him go to the left instead of the right and these sort of things. All that being said, this has the Nintendo touch, which is to say, as soon as you have it in your hands, you will know what to do. You will know exactly how to tap, and it feels different because this isn't a quote-unquote endless runner. It is a curated, guided, level-built Mario game, as in that sort of classic thing. If you've ever played the very first Super Mario, I don't know if you guys have heard of that game, but the very beginning of the game is designed to teach you every single thing, how to jump, how to get a mushroom, all that sort of thing. Super Mario Run, from the little bit I've seen, does the exact same thing. Within the earliest moments you have it in your hand, you go, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. Okay, now I know how to play. Nintendo is genius at having its games teach that way, and people are going to be hooked on it. I think they're just, when this is playing, I think the biggest complaint isn't going to be how good the game is, but when's the next expansion pack? People want more of this, but it's a good sign. It's $10 for, I'd say, about $10 worth of gaming, at least in Nintendo's eyes, and everyone's going to get it.
Nice. And how good for Nintendo's bottom line? Because obviously Nintendo's had weird little issues along the way, especially in this last year. Obviously, they have the new console, the Switch, coming up in 2017. But I mean, moving into mobile like this, you have to imagine that this is going to at least move the needle a little bit for Nintendo.
This is the company has been transforming because they've changed their leadership to a board structure in Japan. They've invited more Americans onto the leadership board. And I think this game is the first major sign of that exact sort of change, where you have them saying, listen, we need to be in smartphones. We need people to see us wherever they're using a screen device, even if we don't control that ecosystem. Nintendo still wants to be the total controller. I don't see them releasing old classic Super Mario games or Zelda games on iPhone yet. I see this as simply a way to tease us into going to their systems, much in the way that free stuff on the Disney Channel drives people to buy Disney merchandise and go to Disney movies and that sort of thing. Nintendo wants to continue being that sort of major titan Disney, and at least they understand that people are going to smartphones and that matters, and that is going to move their bottom line. I think that's going to really set them up to be talked about and cared about as their new stuff comes out in 2017. 2016 was totally a write-off year. This was a tax write-off year, a dump year. And we're saying that when they had Pokemon Go and a new Pokemon game on 3DS, which are both doing gangbusters. But I mean, that's how bad everything else is going for Nintendo. Next year is the hopeful reinvention. I know we're going to talk about next year later in the show, but for now, there's going to be more smartphone gaming coming for them. They've already announced Animal Crossing and Fire Emblem. These are a little nichier of series compared to Mario. And I think Mario coming first is good to set that plate so that people who have Super Mario Run are going to get the advertisement of, maybe you've never heard of Fire Emblem, coming soon to your iPhone, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of smartphones, the economy is booming again, especially if by economy you mean people willing to pay for smartphone games. Now, Sam, you said this year was the year that we reached critical mass in terms of mobile users' willingness to pay to play. And we were just talking about the Mario game that cost $10, which seems like a lot to me for a mobile game. And you're not talking about just downloading the game, but in-app purchases, people are really willing to play that. Pokemon Go, Candy Crush, just multiple games, Mobile Strike, Plants vs. Zombies, Heroes, Clash Royale, and others. What has changed this year that has made people more willing to pay for these games?
Everybody has a smartphone. That is what has changed. I mean, that has been the case for some time, but I think really now the comfort with the Google Play Store and with the iOS App Store is just the kind of thing where everyone has a credit card loaded, or every kid has a payments thing set up for their game in a responsible way. You're not hearing these stories about people's kids spending $2,000 to $3,000 on the App Store. People know how app stores work. They know how in-app purchases work. This is a known beast. And now that we've kind of settled this, people who like these games, and there's adults and kids alike who are spending money on these games, are willing to spend money. They're willing to go in, and what that means is that these games aren't depending on what's known as a whale. This used to be back in the earlier days of the App Store. The quote-unquote whale player was the one who would spend $2,000 or $3,000 because they had a problem. Now we're having more average players coming in and spending 10, 15, 20 bucks while playing these games that have real gameplay. They're not the ones where you have to spend the money to actually enjoy it or spend the money to speed things along, although those games do exist, and I cannot stress enough how terrible they are. But you're getting games that really do allow you to interact with other people, to play these sort of, they're kind of multiplayer in that you'll take your turn, they'll take their turn, and they'll sync it up, this sort of mobile-friendly thing. And you want to pay money in these games to customize yourself, to stand out a little bit. It's a tip jar sort of system I am finding in general, that people are just willing to spend that money. And it's really as simple as that now that that has happened, whether people are spending the money after getting the game for free or spending a few bucks to buy the game that they might not have bought before, the money is just getting spent on smartphone games because you just have more people. They're more comfortable with it, and the games are getting better. You can't get away with just crappy Farmville. You have to have a compelling game, and you have to have an audience, enough people playing it so that when you load it up, you go, oh, there's a party here. I don't want to miss out on the party. I'm joining up. I'm going to play. And then, oh, I'm having a good time playing against other people. I will buy myself the silly Halloween-themed costume for $2. Why not? You know, it's really the why not syndrome. It sounds really anecdotal. I don't have a lot of data about this, but I've been watching. The money is happening. These games are being advertised on every major sports show and TV show. You know, they're the kings, and that's why Activision bought. I think the company is called King, because Activision saw this. They saw money's being spent. Good investment on their part. The Candy Crush empire is kings, and they are still totally printing cash. So it's just a changing of the breeze about how people play with smartphone games.
No end-of-year retrospective on gaming would be complete without a list of some of the best games to come out throughout the year. Sam, I mean, obviously you've been super close to all this stuff all year. You've probably played more gaming hours than all of our viewers combined, I'm guessing. That's in my brain, that's how much you play video games every day.
Are you saying I'm pale? Is that what we're doing here? This glow comes from things other than computer screens, I swear.
I'm saying you're well studied in the world of gaming. Let's put it that way. So what games sit at the top of the list for you?
My personal list, and I'm finding not everyone agrees with me on this one, but the top of my list is a game called The Witness. I gushed about it at the beginning of this year. It came out at the very beginning of this year after being developed for years. And this is what has been called AAA indie. The man who made this game, his name is Jonathan Blow. He's got a team, I want to say, of 8 to 12 people who worked on this together. His vision was to create something that was a lot like Myst, in that you were on an isolated island full of puzzles, not quite sure what was going on. I think this is the most genius game of the year because it offers a mechanic I have never seen before, in which your inventory is not items or weapons, but actual literal human knowledge. As you play the game, you learn everything you need in order to unlock things, because every single gate and spot in the game is closed off by little puzzles. They're just little puzzles that all add up as you play along. This color combination here, this shape of an icon there, kind of going, oh, I know now that I know these 5 things, I can get to this next part of the island and solve these puzzles. It's about perspective, both literally and figuratively. It's tricky, it's clever, it's beautiful, it's confusing, it is rewarding. If you haven't played it this year, don't go on YouTube and watch someone else play it. It is, all of the aha moments in it are wonderful, especially in the wintertime. If your weather stinks and you're stuck in cold weather and you can just cram up with a blanket in this game, you can lose hours to it. Love it, love it, love it. The Witness is my number 1. I will transition really quickly to what I believe will be the number 1 for the entire year for everybody, is a little game called Overwatch. That's by Blizzard Entertainment. Blizzard best known for StarCraft, World of Warcraft, Diablo. This was their first entry into the shooter genre, online multiplayer team shooter. That's not an easy genre to crack, but Overwatch really did it. Clearly, Blizzard had been working on something of this sort for some time. In fact, I'm really honestly, my theory is that they were going to release this as their World of Warcraft follow-up. There was a game, I think it was called Titan. That was a game that was in the works for years, and it just tanked. Like, not internally, they just couldn't make it work. They threw it in the trash, and this, as a result, is just a 6-on-6 team objective game where every character, it has a lot of life, has a lot of cool powers, and every single person in the game can do something to contribute to the success. I think that's the real key, because you're having a lot of people who wouldn't call themselves gamers, certainly not first-person shooter gamers, which is a tricky genre, are coming in and playing this. If you want to see proof of this, go on Twitch. There are more women streaming this game, playing it, and playing it at a high level and having fun than I've seen of any shooter in a long time. And there's more to a metric and to the diversity of a player base than that. But I do think that is a very obvious, quick way to read how many people are loving it, having a good time. It's solid, it's beautiful, it's fun. And Blizzard is not done adding updates for free. They've been adding a bunch of free random stuff ever since the game came out earlier this year. I say this not just the best game of this year, but perhaps for the next few years. It's just a good $40 to $60 to buy it. Get in, it's fun. They're not nickel and diming you with a bunch of unnecessary things. You can pay for extra costumes and things, but you can get in and just keep on playing. It's beautiful. It's a stunner. So those are my top 2 picks for this year.
So what about VR? Because obviously there have been a lot of VR games, not only just games, but experiences, creative tools, that sort of stuff. What are a few of your favorites there?
So Tilt Brush is not necessarily a game, but its interactivity to me, I think, puts it in the gaming threshold. And I would put that in the top 5 of any list. Tilt Brush is an incredible experience to be able to hand someone the HTC Vive, put the obnoxious thing on your head and get the cables over here, and you're like, oh, this is so dumb. But then you're painting in space. It's just, I just love it. I love it. I love it. I get emotional when I think about the time I drew myself in VR. It was the most gloriously narcissistic thing I did all year. Was I drew a 3D cartoon of myself, and I had to really learn how to draw in 3D, because when you first put it on, you just might draw a stick figure, and then you walk around and go, oh wait, I have all 3 dimensions to work with. And that, if you are looking at the screen version of this, you can see my 2D and 3D self in VR. Also some other random doodles. And beyond Tilt Brush, the other not quite gaming experience that I would say is at the top of my list was Google Earth VR. Unbelievable to be able to go in and drag a little globe around, zoom it to ground level, and stand inside of a football stadium, stand inside of a baseball stadium. I actually dragged all the way to my home in Seattle and got on the roof because I was just curious what it looks like up there. And they had everything else around me mapped, all the mountains in the distances, the houses, the neighborhoods. I thought, man, I really need to get a chair up to the top of this. And I just did that. And I could do that. I could go to the top of real mountains. I could go to different nations and different cities. It was just really cool. Now, in terms of pure gameplay, there's a lot on VR that is a lot of quick burst, short, kind of demo-y experiences. This is, the early goings. There aren't a lot of really great games yet, but Hover Junkers is really impressive in spite of some bugs. That's the one where you are actually shooting out. You can move around all over the room that you're in and shoot and aim while using one of your hands to drive around the little hover tank. That's just blows my mind. It feels like the most incredible laser tag experience that I would have killed for as a 10-year-old. So that one, if you happen to have an HTC Vive and you haven't tried it, I urge you to give that one a shot. The other one is for PlayStation VR. That one is called Res Infinite. This is a re-release of a 2001 game that was ahead of its time in 2001. Now it is its time. It is a super trippy, psychedelic dive into this very emotional story about the birth of our world and the organic and mechanical combined and all this sort of high-level hootsy-foosy content. But it's just beautiful and trippy. And it's really, the way that it works is that you are using your hands to control shooting lasers, and everything that you do makes noise. Every motion, every laser blast adds to the trance music that's being played. And so once you've got the headset on, once you're using your hands and you have headphones and everything, it's much different than in 2001 when you had to use a controller and an old crappy TV. It's just night and day. It's exactly the kind of thing that you play and go, okay, VR, it seems a little cheesy, but I see the potential of it. This is whoa. And I think it's kind of crazy at the top of my list is something that took 15 years to get there.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't all great this year. There were some disasters. One of the big ones was No Man's Sky. What do you think happened there? It was a much anticipated game that people did not like.
No Man's Sky had been talked about as an idea for a long time. And this was an indie team that Sony partnered with so that it would have come out on PlayStation 4 and computer at some point. And they eventually announced, all right, it's coming out finally this summer. It's coming. And when it did, it just really felt like somebody said, we have to ship this game. We could just work on it forever, but we got to ship it. And the game that they shipped wasn't done. It has an incredible premise and engine in that you can just go anywhere in an infinite galaxy and find a planet that has unique geometry and unique creatures. But they didn't really make a game for it. You really just get bored. There's just nothing, there's no sense of true discovery, no sense of why I need to go, quote unquote, over there, which is that sort of manifest destiny that I think we as humans have. When you would go there, you would just find some really herpy-derp, bad-looking dinosaur standing next to the same kind of building that is on every other planet. It did not live up to the trailer and promised videos that had come out in the years before. Those videos were full of just like incredible looking monsters and incredibly manufactured scenes. And we all kind of worried that those were a little cooked and sweetened. And sure enough, that was the case. Now, that being said, the team who's making the game, Hello Games, just put out a patch that actually lets you create a little base that you can take with you from planet to planet, which sort of fixes some of the logistical pains in the butt that the game shipped with. And they say it's the first of many patches to come. And I honestly think the money they made from selling so many copies will let them at least build a few of these patches, make people not hate them, and then they'll eventually be able to sell another game without having gamers hate them forever. But those next few patches have to be amazing. This first one was good. The next ones have to be better, or Hello Games is done.
Well, now is the time in the show to take a look ahead at what we have in store for us in 2017. Will we see a virtual reality game where you can play the part of a 40-something robot-obsessed podcasting mother of three?
Maybe.
I would play that. What do you think's coming, Sam?
Would you? No, I think we should stop this whole episode and talk about how you would feel to play your own life simulated in VR. Would that delight you, or would that make you sad? Would that, like, where do you think that would go? Because I think we can all imagine a VR experience that recreates our exact life. Maybe that would be a blissful experience. Maybe that would be terrible. I know Job Simulator lets you simulate being a store clerk or being a mechanic. And it's sort of, having worked in food service and played Job Simulator, I will say, definitely one of the most existential meta things I've ever done in my life. So let's get back to the topic at hand, 2017. Virtual reality, I think, is going to have its last stab. This is going to be the big year in terms of people having worked on projects for some time. Now, when the HTC Vive and Oculus first came out, they were rushing to get stuff out. Lots of small, creative, but ultimately short indie experiences. You didn't have your Uncharted or Gears of War or Battlefield sort of big quests in VR. Those still haven't come. So I think those are going to hit in 2017. The biggest one I know about, it's called budget cuts. It's going to be on the HTC Vive, possibly on other platforms. Requires using your hands, and you're sneaking around a giant robot factory. And the idea is that you don't have to go very far. You sort of stay standing, but you can duck and sort of lean around. And little robots will see you, and their eyes will lock with your eyes if they catch you and kill you, and you have to start over. Sort of Metal Gear Solid sneaking around in VR. Super enthralling, super interesting, and I want that to come out next year. There's no guarantee it will. I mean, VR is the kind of thing where money isn't necessarily getting made. There's a guy named Dean Hall. He actually just said this right before recording. He made a game called DayZ, which made a ton of money. It was just one of these early access zombie games. And he made a VR game earlier this year, and it sold pretty well. And he said, VR right now is not profitable. He said, I'm at the top of the Steam VR charts. I'm still not making enough to pay my employees. Like, he's not talking about getting himself a bonus or a car. He's just trying to get other people's paychecks paid. And he said, I'm bleeding cash as an experiment. That's not a good sign. So it's going to really depend on if Oculus has a giant game and people buy that, or if the Sony camp really gets a big PlayStation VR game and people buy that. People are buying the sets as this sign of, wow, cool first year sort of thing. But if the second year doesn't have a big hit, and if the needle's not getting moved with like an updated, more comfy headset from some of these companies, or fewer wires or what have you, then I would say end of 2017 will mark whether or not we should really expect VR to be a thing that we are playing for the years. You know, it may just be that we just, as impressive as it is, it's just may never really hit market saturation.
Well, I'm crossing my fingers because I would love to see VR evolve over the next 5 years and see where you end up 5 years from now and beyond. But a few of the other things to look forward to. Obviously, we mentioned a little bit earlier the Nintendo Switch, first half of 2017. I mean, I'm not sure when exactly do we expect this, and it's definitely different from what Nintendo has done in the past. Do you think it's going to be a success?
Nintendo's been insisting March of next year, March of 2017. Okay. We just saw Jimmy Fallon playing with it last night before this recording. He got to try out the Legend of Zelda game playing on the Nintendo Switch. They have an event coming in January in which they're going to announce a bunch of games, a bunch of details, what we can expect for the year coming along. Development kits are already landing in random studios right now, so that means we're going to probably have more leaks as the month goes on. Ultimately, I think that Nintendo could be poised to really kill with this if the price is low. Now remember, this is a combination home portable system. That means we are no longer splintering the Nintendo world between, right now, the Wii U and the 3DS. They're really combining. And I think that's going to be the thing that really moves this, because you're going to have people buying this for kids, buying this for adults, kids who, adults who are kids at heart, that sort of thing. So I think that is the biggest chance this has, is that whether you want it for the home or want it for the go, both of those consumers can buy the same thing and can expect the same games, as opposed to, oh, Pokemon only comes out for portable. Oh, Smash Brothers only comes out for home. These sorts of divergences, that's over in Nintendo's eyes. Splatoon's going to be for everyone. These sort of franchises, and that's going to be the thing that we find out in January, is that games that came out on the Wii U that nobody bought will be coming to the Switch, and they're good games. So it's time will really tell, and also third parties will really tell whether third parties get on this platform. But that we've been saying that for years. Right. Nintendo would do better if only more third parties made games for them, and then third parties don't show up, and then Nintendo says we're gonna do better. I mean, no, it's a place you're gonna get Nintendo games there, maybe a couple of other games, but Nintendo first. It's not as powerful as PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are about to leave Nintendo in the dust even more. I think you guys know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, every time Apple makes an announcement of new iPad, iPad Pros, or a new MacBook, or a new operating system, they're always trying to push gaming. Do you see that becoming a platform at all any more than it is now? Next year?
You mean Apple releasing like a home system? I don't see.
Oh, no. I mean just gaming like on your Apple
like
TV
iOS
or gaming. Yeah, gaming on iOS or.
I think Apple has always let gaming just sort of appear. It's built everything else, and then like, well, I guess games might show up. And then the iPhone, it was really an accident, to be honest. Steve Jobs famously just kind of shrugged his shoulders at the whole game side of things. It'll just happen. So I don't see, and I certainly don't see Apple stepping up their game to get something on television sets. That would be a wonderful surprise for 2017 to see Apple really come out with a 4K HDR television sort of thing that unites stuff and has power for a gaming platform. But right now, Apple doesn't have to do anything. Like we were saying, people are spending money, and Apple's getting 30% of each of those transactions when those are iOS devices. Google's also getting that 30% for their share. So they don't have to do anything. They can just go, it's got better battery life. It doesn't have a headphone jack, and people will probably keep on buying it.
And you can still play games on it. So any final thoughts on 2017? I know we've got Project Scorpio around the corner, possibly new God of War game. I don't know. What are the final few things that you're super excited about?
I mean, Project Scorpio is going to be very interesting because PlayStation 4 Pro adds a little bit of power to games that currently exist, but they're essentially still looking pretty much the same. Project Scorpio may very well blow up the Xbox ecosystem with a system that can do a lot more. That could leave older games behind in the dust because they really are trying to make this like the iPhone, where you go from the iPhone 5 to the iPhone 6. Yeah, there's a power difference. Some games just don't run very well on the iPhone 5 that did on the 6, that sort of example. And that may be very well what we're going to have here. It's going to be 4 times the power, give or take, for the Project Scorpio Xbox, which is supposed to launch at the end of 2017. It's going to need a big game to go with it. Halo is sort of likely, in my eyes, that this would be a good time for Xbox to say, yeah, surprise, we got a really powerful system and we got a new Halo to blow you away, even though they've already got Halo Wars 2 coming out in, I want to say, February of next year. So I think ultimately it's going to be seeing how people respond to the 4Kization of these game consoles. Game consoles, I think, are going to lead the charge because people will look when they want to buy a new set. Well, what do I watch in 4K? There's not a ton of content, but there's content. Oh, but the games are ready. Yeah. Lots of games are ready on PlayStation and Xbox, not Nintendo, sorry. I think that's what we're going to be watching is what are people buying? Are they buying the 4K sets? Or are these over extra powerful consoles kind of a waste? Because really, they're juicing up mostly for 4K. They don't need that much juice to run in 1080p and to run good content. So that's that and all the other guessing for what games are to show up. We didn't get a lot of big announcements for stuff in 2017. There's stuff that's been announced that just kind of disappeared. For example, God of War got announced, and we haven't heard about it. Crackdown 3 is from the Xbox team. Haven't heard about it. So I think February and March, we're going to see a lot of announcements. Studios aren't necessarily waiting for Christmas time. So I think we're going to have a big slate of stuff coming by May and June. I think it's going to be a really busy first half of next year. And we're going to get stuff announced and then immediately launched. I think we're going to see a lot more Beyonce-style launches of games, both from big studios and indies than ever before, especially with the free-to-play model in. Gosh, we just got a game called Let It Die last week. Surprise launched on PlayStation 4, full free-to-play game about being a weird, like you're in a weird S&M parlor and you're just killing everything you see, and it's making tons of money and people love it. What? This is what gaming is now. We're all adults. We're all throwing money at everything, and everyone's going 4K. It's all wonderful, wild, and wacky, and there might be crazy VR to come as well. Who knows? Who knows what HoloLens is going to have out there, for example? I mean, augmented reality. We didn't even talk about that because that is still a developing thing. So when I say VR, when I said VR might be dead, that is only because something else way more logical and way less obnoxious may show up. Everything is getting smaller, cheaper, less battery power, more power efficient. That's going to be really interesting. Like, what's the next big awesome thing, in my opinion, is going to be more like a Pokemon Go, a device you can use anywhere that does something amazing anywhere you go. That is what I think you should keep your eyes out for in 2017.
Well, I look forward to hearing your reviews of all of these products, as well as your different facial hair, different hair color. That's what I look forward to.
Different VR goggles, different hats. You got a lot to look forward to in 2017.
This is a Parappa the Rapper themed hat that I just...
Oh, excellent.
We just talked about Parappa the Rapper yesterday.
Yes, we did.
Well,
I got this. It's cool.
Kick, punch, it's all in the mind.
Sam, thank you so much. Sam Machkovech is a culture reporter. And I think we've either muted you or I don't know, you muted yourself. Thank you so much for coming on at Sam Red on Twitter, and we'll see you soon.
Yes. Have a happy new year, everyone. A good holiday season. May your basements be full of gaming and fun.
That is right. Thank you again, Sam. We'll talk to you soon. Happy New Year.
Take care.
All right, tomorrow's guest will be Kurt Wagner, another frequent guest on the show throughout the year from Recode, to help us break down the year's worth of social media stories. It's going to get a little hairy because there was a lot of social media news this year. So we're going to talk all about that with Kurt tomorrow. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. Of course, you can always take part in the show by emailing us, tnt@twit.tv. Leave us a short voicemail. 260-TNT-SHOW is the number. And you can find us on Twitter. We are at Tech News Today TV.
And you can find all the ways to subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNT. And if you want to tweet at me the games I should be playing, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Megan Morrone.
And I'm at Jason Howell. Thanks to our technical director, as always, Kara Cole. Thanks to Jammer B for helping out in the studio and scrolling some words on screen. Thanks to Kevin for editing. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.